Welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter, the podcast where I have conversations with firefighters all around the country on all things fire service related, especially those three things that I think make a great firefighter: pride, training, and physical fitness. So this is part 2 of the interview with Marc Aloan from last week. I'm going to keep it short and simple. Marc has a lot of passion for the job. If you don't believe me, listen to part 1. And with that, here's Marc Aloan.
I'm a middle. I'm a centerist. I love the middle. And I just think, and it's funny, I actually had this conversation with my probie yesterday. We kind of got talking about some things, and he has done time somewhere else. He's not what I would call a probie, right? It's not his first gig, but he's a probie to us. He's new to us. Mm-hmm. And we got talking about, people having to do this and that and the responsibilities in the fire station, and cleaning came up. And I said, I try to pitch in every now and again, if I don't have things going on or pressing, I'll try to do this or that. And he said, well, don't take this wrong, Cap. He said, but to me, if the officer is coming down and doing tasks of the entry-level firefighter, if that happens all the time, it ends up becoming an expectation of the entry-level firefighter that the officer will do it. And it kind of equals out to where now there's not that, boss subordinate thing going on. You feel like you're equal to that person. He said, I think over time that breeds insubordination. And this is from a young guy telling me. I mean, he's not young, but it's a new firefighter. And I think he hit it right on the head, right? Like, we all have a role in the firehouse, and that's why we have rank, and that's why we have a chain of command. And I think we've just gone too far the other way now. I think we've put so much pressure and responsibility on the leaders, and we've beat to death what servant leadership means, to the point where we've mutated into a thing where now basically the company officer has to shoulder everything. It's their responsibility, and so I don't know that it's a millennial thing. I get that people learn different ways, but we still have a hands-on blue collar job. There's only so many ways to teach it. And I really don't care how my hose deployment makes you feel. I'm sorry that I didn't speak to you more cordially and pat you on the back every time you did it right. But I also think we struggle with the fire service of we hang on this chain of command thing, but we don't understand that the chain of command on the fire ground and the chain of command on the fire station are usually two different things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why previous generations did it the way they did, because they understood that for most people, it's very difficult for you and I to work in the fire station in a kind of peer environment, right? Because in the fire station, there really is no rank, right? Like, what I want for dinner doesn't make it for dinner because I'm the captain.
Right.
But when we go on the fire ground, what I want done is what I want done. And it's not up for negotiation a lot of the time. And through this safety culture and all that, we've kind of perpetuated that, everybody's a leader and everybody's a safety officer. So when you disagree with an order, you can just say, oh, excuse me, Captain, we're not going to do that today. And no, you're going to do it. And I think previous generations realized that it was too hard to be, I guess, friendly in the firehouse and be rigid in the street. So they just took the street all the time. And I think that doesn't really have a place anymore. I think we've learned that you can't just treat people like shit all day and expect them to perform for you, right? Like there comes a point where you're just being a jerk. But yeah, I think the way that people learn has changed a lot, but I don't necessarily know it's for the best. I don't know that you can learn on a tablet what you can learn in a parking lot, that you can learn in a burn building, right? I don't know that you can learn your district from a Google map the way you can learn it getting out into the street. So I am of the thought that the newer generation, they need to learn our ways as far as what the fire service does. Now, maybe the way the older generations convey that to them could use some revamping, right? Because we'll eat our young. We're bad about that. We treat people. Yeah. We show affection by treating people like total shit. Like that's our job. And it still stands true this day. And the problem with that is that it becomes a cyclical thing where, generation that's learned. And that's where we got to this point where we have people that don't necessarily know what they're doing, but they're just going to, oh, well, listen to me because I know, they're not open to things. So I just think it's everybody. But to say that we need to change the way we do everything because of this generation or that generation is absolutely off base to me. Like there's things we need to continue.
I don't think we need to change the way we do things. I think we need to change the way we understand things. for me, the only real issue I've ever had was the why. They want to know why. And I had a hard time coming to grips with that. So I really didn't change a whole lot other than trying to understand why they're asking me why. And so when I have new recruits and stuff, I usually try to incorporate now the why we do things. Because when I came on, it was like, do this. Why? Go fuck yourself. Do it. Now do it 100 times in a row. So to me, that's the biggest understanding in the fire service from any generation, I guess, is the why. They want to know why we do things. And I didn't have that luxury when I came on. It was just, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do it.
Yeah. So I would ask you this then. Did you not have that luxury, or did you not realize that you had that luxury? And I say it because of this, because so when I think back to my time coming out of the volunteer fire department, I still had a lot of those World War II era guys, right, that were around, and I had people that have been doing it a long time, and I don't ever remember having to ask why, because it wasn't just, hey, go fill this air cylinder. It was, hey, come here. You're here a lot. Let me show you how this works. All the why was answered in the instruction. So I think maybe it's not that the new people don't need to ask why. It's that you need to have the conversation early on that, hey, I am going to teach you how to do this job. Shut your mouth and let me teach you. When we are done, if you still have questions, that's the time. But the problem is that you can't even get through a drill anymore without, excuse me, why are we doing it this way instead of that way?
Oh, yeah.
Well, can we just get through this way? And when you show me that you can do this way, or can we just, maybe it would make more sense to you at the end if you just completed the entire evolution instead of us having to stop every 2 minutes to address your questions that will be answered, as we build up. There's a reason we do it in a building block format. There's a reason we do, getting your gear on before we do throwing ladders, right? Because if you don't have your gear on, it doesn't matter. And I think now the new generations are just so used to having all the information at their fingertips with technology that they're not used to having to wait, where people like you and I, we came up before that. So I didn't know what was down the pipe. I hadn't seen 15 YouTube videos on how to advance a hose line before I went to the fire.
That's true. That's a good
point. So I just feel like it does get explained. It's that people are impatient. And by all means, I tell all my people, like, don't ever be afraid to ask me something, like maybe I'll be a jerk to you if it's completely off basis, but if it's something that's my preference, I tell people about that. I'm going to teach you this way because this is my preference. It's not the only way. It doesn't mean you can't have a different way. I mean, I just did hose deployments with people 2 shifts ago, and I learned like 3 new things that were different than the way I've been doing that work out better. I've changed my approach by people that don't have as much time in the fire service, probably don't have as much experience as me, but doesn't mean I can't learn from them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword to me, right? Be objective as an instructor and be able, or as a company officer, and be able to, realize that your way is not always the right way. But as a student, shut your mouth and let the person teach. And then if you get to the end, there's questions, ask them. But, nobody wants to be cut off when they're teaching, basically. So that's what I throw it back to. Is it really that they don't have the opportunity, or we didn't have the opportunity, or is it just that we were better at explaining things back in the day, and also that we went to more calls where that experience came faster? So you didn't go for 2 years before your first fire, and a lot of the questions of why are not because people are trying to be jerks. It's because they have unanswered gaps in their experience where they're trying to tie these skills together. Well, what if we do this, and what if we pull up to that? What if we pull up to that? They're not being annoying, they just don't want to let you down. But if you're not running enough calls for the calls to basically solder those instructional lessons together, that's what they're asking.
Right.
And it's really hard to answer with that, because I could tell you all day long, oh, well, we pull up the house fire, do this, this, and this. Hold on, there's 100 caveats that are going to change that as we pull up, right? And you don't get that unless you run calls together and stuff. So that's where I sit with it. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a matter of perspective.
Right. I had a guy, I still have this guy that works for me. He's an excellent young firefighter. And we had a forcible entry door in the firehouse for a while. And so he would practice on it doing, the one hand force practice. He down perfect. And then we had a fire, and he came and told me, he goes, I tried to force that door with one hand. I couldn't do it.
Whoop my ass.
Yeah. Whoop my ass. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it is.
Yep.
But, one of the things too, speaking on that is the ego part of it too. Like you said, when you go and do training and you learn something from somebody that maybe doesn't have the time on that you do, there's about two ways to go that I've noticed. One is you don't need to learn that because it's an ego thing and you don't want to admit that you don't know something. Or the other way is to say, wow, that's real interesting. Let's try it. Let's see how this works. You know, and I think for me, as a training officer, I do get a lot of people that are upset with training, and having some perspective now, I see that it's they're not comfortable with some of the things that they're doing. They're afraid to fail or look bad because they are a captain or they've been on for 15 years. But the truth of it is, you know, some of the best learning comes from failure. I'm not saying go out and try to fail, but embrace it for what it is. It's a lesson. You know, if you do everything right, perfect, you're not going to learn a thing. You know,
you will always learn more from when you mess up. And I think that's a matter too of kind of what goes back to what I was talking about with the pressure I think that we inadvertently or unknowingly are putting on these company officers. Is just, I look at it this way. I want my people to be better at the job than me, right? Because at the end of the day, my job as a company officer, yes, I'm a firefighter first. I preach that all day long. I still get out there and pull hose. I still get out there and enforce doors, mainly because I have to teach it. So if I don't know what I'm doing, how am I going to teach somebody else? But I would hope once I have taught it to you that you become better at it than me, because guess what? That is your primary job. My job is to manage our crew on a fire scene. That's a very hands-on management style, right? I still have to crawl halls. I still have to do searches. I still have to flow water sometimes, and that's fine. But that's not my primary responsibility, according to my fire department, right? According to, our whole theory on being a company officer, our job there is to watch conditions and manage what's going on with our assignment. That's my job. My job is not to be the 100% best hose, deployment expert on the fire department. That's the nozzleman's job. And depending on your staffing, that changes. I get it. If there's only two people on the rig, I worked with two people on the rig for a long time. So I was the nozzleman and the firefighter, and the company officer. I had to do all these things. So, but you should always encourage your people to be better than you, because at the end of the day, we've said it time and time again in every company officer leadership class I've ever taken, yet we don't heed it, is that your people make you look good. Mm-hmm. If my people are doing good, they're not going to say, oh, well, why can't Captain Aloan stretch a hose like that? They're going to say, wow, look what that crew did. He must be doing something right as their, quote unquote, formal leader. So why fight people that are better than you? I want a crew of people that are better than me. I want a whole fire department of people that are better than me. I just hope that what I bring to the equation pushes them to make them better than me. That's my goal. And if you don't have that goal, then it's 100% all about you. And you're in it for the wrong reasons. Absolutely. The ego, I call it the T-shirt and bumper sticker crowd. They don't want to put the effort in the job, but they want to wear the T-shirts, off duty so everybody knows they're a firefighter, and bumper stickers on their cars so everybody can recognize that they're heroes or whatever. But they don't want to put the effort in, because that ego gets in their way. I take offense to that, though, because I have 2 drawers full of T-shirts, and I've realized the other day that every T-shirt I own is a fire department T-shirt in some way, shape, or form. So, hey, right here. I can't go anywhere now. I blame myself, but that's a pride thing. But no, I get it. It's no different than when you volunteer, and it's the guys that they listen to the radio to figure out when the last unit's taken up, so they can go down and sign the sign-in sheet and say they were there and get their call and do a damn thing. All right, let me ask you something. Now, I've seen quite a few of your podcasts, and you actually film them right where you're at right now, right? Yep, my pseudo home office. Right. So my question is this: did they film Risky Business behind you, or is it Modern Family? Because that house looks exactly like both of those. I'll thank you to stay out of my personal business. I'm a hard-hitting journalist. Yeah. It's this was actually supposed to be our formal dining room, but we're not really the formal type a lot of the time. So we kind of turned it into the office. I was supposed to have an office upstairs in our extra bedroom, but I was fortunate enough to be blessed with 2 beautiful daughters who have claimed that as their playroom. So so here I am, but it's the 2.5 kid cat in a dog house. That's what it looks like behind you. I challenge you to watch Risky Business tonight. Well, it looks just like it. Exactly like it. I'm worried now that Tom Cruise is going to come skating behind me. It's going to get awkward. So let me ask you this. All right. What else can I talk to, Mark? Okay, I got a good question for you. So you started your fire inside. You started writing articles. How was that accepted in your fire department? Did they see you as trying to separate yourself, or were they busting your balls? Because for me personally, anytime I've put anything out there, this podcast or articles or whatever, I'm a little bit nervous because I'm always worried about the blowback from my own brothers and sisters. Were you ever worried about that? Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I was so kind of undercover about it to begin with, because I didn't know what to expect. And the more I think about it, I think that was on me. That was all in my head. I'm sure there's people that could really care less what I do on my time off, right? They couldn't care less that I travel and teach. I'm sure there's people that think I am 100% unqualified to tell anybody anything about the fire department, and probably based on some experience I had given them over the course of knowing me, right? Before I was as cultured and, refined. That's a great word, right? A little chiseled more than I was. And then there's people that probably think, whether they'd say it or not, like, right on, he's a good person for it. He's got a good voice for it. He's articulate. He's definitely into the fire service. I don't think you'll ever meet anybody that says I wasn't into the fire service.
Right.
Most people will tell you I'm into it to a fault. I think it's received in my current apartment. I think it's received pretty well. I'm sure there's some giggling and stuff that goes on behind closed doors. And, I got asked yesterday about my battalion if I was going to get a Kool-Aid Man tattoo. So it's not like people don't know it. I don't know. I hear this from everybody that teaches on the national level. I hear from everybody that has a blog or a podcast. It's just people take it wrong a lot of the time. They take it as you're arrogant. They take it as you're, throwing, rocks at your own department, or people take things personally a lot of the time. And I guess it goes back to the old adage, again, if the shoe fits, wear it, right? But I can tell you that more times than not, the things that I write and the things that I discuss have 100% to do with me and my shortcomings and my failures and my missteps over here than they have to do with anybody I've ever encountered. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. We could talk off record here about, I could show you the posts that were written for somebody in my career, right? The things where I laid it out there because I had nowhere else to vent to it. Right. So yeah, some of it is 100% directed out, but most of it, the majority of it is about me. And if you can't see that, that's not my fault. And if you can't see that I'm trying to make the fire service better, to make myself better, and to make anybody I come in contact with better, then I don't know what to do for you. I don't feel like I'm arrogant. In fact, I don't know why people want to listen to me half the time. I'm grateful that they do. I'm grateful for the opportunities I have. I just feel like there's probably more qualified, more experienced people to do it. But I also know that I get quite a bit of feedback that says, thank you. And this really spoke to me. And I did what you said and it worked. You talk about the young guys. I had a guy email me, I think like a week ago now. And he said, hey, I read this blog, or I read your article in FDTN newsletter. I just want to let you know I've been on the job for 30 years and I love everything you're talking about. I love your perspective on it. I think more people need to hear it. I think we need to take the fire service back. So to me, while I appreciate when the young people resonate with it, it's getting somebody that's been on the job 2 and 3 times as long as me to turn around and say, hey, you're on point, kid, keep it up. That really resonates with me. So for all the people that would hate on me for doing the things that I'm doing or think I'm doing, I would trade all those for the 1 or 2 people that are, well further in their career saying, hey, keep it up. We want to hear more of it.
It's hard to put yourself out there, especially when you're talking on a subject that you realize people are passionate about. Look at what's written about the triple load. You're going to find it's the only thing in the world, or it's the worst thing in the world. God forbid, it's the worst. Or what about like automatic nozzles, smoothbores?
Yeah,
it's hard to put an opinion out there because you're going to be bashed. Now, I'll tell you what, in my opinion, where I like what you write and what you put out there is because you tap into a common denominator. When you're writing. It goes across the board. It could be a small department. It could be New York City, right? When you talk about how rank has lost its influence, or you talk about generation stuff, that's at its very core, the base of every fire department, volunteer, career, big or small. That's one of the things I really enjoy about your the fire inside. And then, like you wrote an article, you may not realize this, but you did write an article for Firehouse about the engine bay, the importance of the engine bay. Great article. Everything you've written is great because I think you tap in to that common denominator, that base firefighter instinct, and you have great information, And like you said, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of Michael Snodgrass, Fire Talk and
yep.
Fire. Okay. I just interviewed Michael, but I've known Michael for a couple of years, and he's so honest about his skill set. you know, and that's who I want to interview on this podcast, for people that are honest. They're like, hey, you know what? I have my faults. Here's what I've learned. And then you put it out there for people to share. I really think that's where you tap into a lot of this stuff. Have you ever read 20,000 Alarms by Dick Hamilton? It's an older book. He was on Rescue 2 in New York.
I want to say that's one I tried to track down and couldn't years ago. Like, it was hard to find.
It is hard to find. I've got a copy. It was one of the first fire books I read when I was a young firefighter. So I read that, and then I read several years later Leo Stapleton's books. You know, like what's it, Ice and Fire and Jakes and all that. Anyway, my point is this: Leo Stapleton writes from a point of his humility. You know, he even makes up a character that's actually him, but you know, he's a humble person. You read Dick Hamilton's 20,000 Alarms, everything is me, me, me. I did this, I did that. And I always thought that was a great dichotomy of the fire service. You got those two kind of firefighters, you know, look what I did, or look what I was part of because of this great crew or this great department. And I think your writing actually reaches that.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you saying all that stuff. And, you know, I try to be in the center because I think that's where most people are. I don't think most people, you know, you take the nozzle debate, right? I would say that I'm on the smoothbore side of things, but I've also put out fires with a fog nozzle, and I just want a nozzle to go put out the fire with. Like, I'm not going to, how dare you give me this fog nozzle, right? Like, is that my first
handle?
choice?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, I don't like it, you know? So while it may not be my preference, I also know that most of us don't get to decide what our preference is at work.
Right.
We have what we have. So you can either sit there and be salty about it, or you can sit there and be salty about it and figure out how to use it best. Right. So that's where I am. But most people to me are in the middle on most things. Most people have a preference, and most people have reality. And reality is almost always straight down the middle for, I bet 90% of the people you'll come in contact with. And unfortunately, you know, especially with the teaching and the conferences and stuff, you almost have to be on one end or the other. Nobody wants to, you couldn't have all, you either need to be a ladder specialist, right? Or a smoothbore specialist, or everybody has to find that niche because that's what sets you apart from the rest of the people. So in a lot of ways, we have forgotten how to come together in the middle and realize there's 900 ways to do this job. And into that article, you know, it all goes back to firefighting is the commonality. The equipment we use isn't the commonality. The theory, the tactics we use, it's the job. The job is where we should all be able to come together. And that's where I try to write from. And again, like you said, you know, Michael is very honest about his skill set. I have always been very honest about my experience or lack thereof, because nobody wants to hear you bullshit in a classroom. No, I'm not going to sit there and tell you I've been to 100,000 fires. You know, I'm very honest. I've never made a grab in a fire. You know, in the big scheme of things, I probably haven't been to a lot of fires compared to most people. But I have always loved this job. I think that you can have good ideas that maybe you weren't able to do in your department. It doesn't make them a bad idea. It makes you in the wrong environment. So people will find good concepts. People will latch onto them. And the experience thing is definitely important with tactics. That's why I'm not out there teaching how to force doors and how to do all these tactical skills, because quite honestly, I have tons to learn about them still myself. But, you know, I compare it, my analogy would be like a coach. A lot of the greatest coaches in sports either A, never played their sport, or B, did not play at a high level. Does that make them not understand how it works? No, it just means they weren't blessed with the raw talent that you need to be successful at it. So how is firefighting any different? Right. You know, being a great nozzle firefighter doesn't mean you'll be a great fire chief. Being a great fire chief doesn't mean that you were a great nozzle firefighter. It's all relevant. And so, you know, kind of back to the humility thing, my scope is this, is that I wouldn't sit here and tell you I was a great firefighter. I wouldn't tell you that I'm a great role model in a lot of ways. There are many flaws about me. Seeing one part of my life from the fire inside is in no way a complete version of Marc Aloan. There's a 1,000 people that'll tell you that. You know, I'm kind of a, you know, you get what you get out of me. And, you know, I have my vices and my flaws just like everybody else. So my goal is not to make people be like me. My goal is to make people be better than me and learn from my mistakes and not repeat those mistakes. So that at the end of the day, hopefully the people I influence are a better product on the other end. So they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations that I've been to. There are people that around them didn't have to suffer from those missteps, right? And those failures. They're less and less. And that should be your goal moving forward. I want to make everybody like me, trust me, the world doesn't need any more of me. One of me is just plenty. So.
You don't want a Marc Aloan army.
Oh my God. It's 2020. Be careful what you wish for. And it's Friday the 13th. I'm never like one of those, I don't know if people have kids or not, but that Wreck-It Ralph internet movie where all the Wreck-It Ralphs come out and form one big one and try to take over the world. It's all I'm picturing. It's horrible. God help us.
So, what I'm hearing from you is a lot like being a parent too. You want your kids to be better than you. You want your kids to have more opportunities than you, and learn from your mistakes. And that's kind of what I'm getting from what you're talking about. So I've read most everything you've done. The article when rank lost its influence.
Mm-hmm.
Why so angry? Did you write that from a place of mad? It comes off that way to me. Like you're like fucking pissed. You're like, God damn it. You sat down, started typing.
Yeah, I think I have had, how do I say this? I think my journey as a company officer was kind of up and down. And I was very fortunate at one point to work with a crew that I wouldn't trade for anybody. And I think I had a hard time with life after them. And my best friend was my driver for like 2.5 years. And we had an awesome new guy in the back. And, he ended up getting transferred. My driver ended up getting promoted. I ended up getting transferred. And it was just kind of me learning how to deal with new people who didn't necessarily come from that, passionate firefighting mindset. And I think you probably get one or two great crews, throughout your career. You're going to have decent crews, all throughout, but you get those one or two where everything just clicks. It's a well-oiled machine. And I think coming down off that high is very difficult, and you start noticing things that you didn't have to worry about before. But yeah, I think overall in the fire service, and that one too was not even just me. A lot of it was me, but it was other people that I was interacting with, just to kind of what you talked about earlier with the millennial thing, where it's just, we've become so accommodating that, at what point does being the company officer matter? At what point does being the battalion chief matter? Why are we always having to adjust? I would hope that if you're promoting people to a rank that they have earned it. And if they have earned it, why does everybody get to question them and suggest they do this or do that? And I don't know. Again, I go back to the middle. It's kind of tough because it doesn't mean people on your crew can't have some good input, but at some point the officer needs to be the officer. And that needs to be it. But that borders on the whole, we'll just do what I say thing. Well, sometimes that's it. That is what it is. And if you can't figure that out in training or the firehouse, again, when you go to that, extrication or CPR or a structure fire, and your officer says, I need you to do this now. Yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, is the only thing that should be coming out of your mouth. And when you let it slide for so long before that, people lose that ability. And I've experienced that at calls. Hey, I want you this. Well, I don't care what you were going to do at this point in time. You will do this. We will talk about it later. I'm open to your feedback later, but hopefully if the system works right, I should have some kind of intangible skill set to lead the scene more than you. At that point. And I'm not saying you can't have good people. It doesn't mean you can't have a firefighter that's rode backwards for 20 years and I'm 12 years officer. But that's knowing your people, right? Knowing your input. So that one was more from a place of people with less time, with less experience, always having to speak up in that kind of millennial feel of, well, I don't have to do it because I don't want to thing. And it's just like at some point, and it goes back to the thing I hate, respect the rank, not the person. Well, if you put a person in that rank that is not respectable in the rank, then the department doesn't respect the rank. So don't even have it. Just get rid of it. So that's kind of where that was. So, I think some anger there, some frustration, and again, not just mine. Definitely, I see that as a whole. I talk to people all over the place. Well, I have this officer, but he doesn't want to be an officer, so I'm being the officer from the back seat. It's like your department's failing you. That's a problem.
And you know what? I actually witnessed that myself. I've got this. I got a company that. The guy's kind of supernatural. He's a firefighter, which our rank, the lowest rank is called firefighter. Mm-hmm. And he's a firefighter, but he goes to every class. He constantly trains, and he is definitely one of the more knowledgeable people as far as, skills and everything like that, and wanting to try them out. But he's the lowest rank on the engine. So he is pushing his crew and they're great. It's a good crew. And they really, they do everything he says and all that as far as training, not like on the fire scene and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered, I'm like, how would I feel, talk about ego. If I was his captain, I would probably, me personally, Jake Barnes, I would be like, ego problems big time. Like, yeah, don't tell me what to do or whatever. That's where I would fail. But, leading from the back is a real thing sometimes. It really is.
Yeah. And to counter the ego thing, I mean, if that's where you're at as a company officer, then if the first thing in your mind as a company officer, when you have somebody in the back that, again, it's different to just be back there and just be running your mouth constantly. Right. It's another to know that you have gone to trainings, you are going to classes, you are out there applying what you learned, because I'm watching you do it in training. The first thing that fires off in my mind when you say that is that I, as company officer, need to step my game up as far as my training and my knowledge. I have fallen behind at that point. If that's how I feel that this person is outdoing me, that's on me. And unfortunately, you said the ego comes in and it gets reflected. Well, this person's making me look bad. No, you're making yourself look bad. And I'm probably going to eat my words. If I have to eat my words on this, I'm coming back after you, right? but demotion is probably the most underutilized tool in the fire department, right? In most fire departments. Once you make that rank, you're going to be there, and we're not going to demote you, but we're going to try to find somewhere to hide you, stash you off in a job that maybe isn't as important as operations in our eyes. And if we can't do that, we're going to promote you further to get you away. Like, why do we promote people that can't do their job? You're supposed to demote those people. Exactly. And it's not, that has nothing to do with my fire department, but that's just things I have seen and stories I've heard. It's the same everywhere.
Well, I know you like the subject culture, and we haven't even talked about that. And I don't know, I don't think we're gonna have time with this one. I'd love to have you back to do culture, because I'm a big proponent of that. But my experience has been usually on the negative side of that. I feel like, I've always said this, I'm high enough up in the rank structure to see all the problems below me, but I'm not high enough up to make the changes. If you read anybody's post about education, degrees and stuff in the fire service, it's one or the other. Don't need it, fuck it. Or it's like, it's valuable. So for me, I didn't get my degree till I had 22, 23 years in the fire service total. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for this fire protection administration degree. No shit. When I went to walk, when I graduated that May, I went to walk. I went down to EKU because I only lived like an hour and a half away from it. There were people with the same degree as me walking that were 22 years old, never had a fire department job, and they've got a degree in fire protection administration. And they were talking about how they were going to become a chief and how they're going to walk onto this department. I didn't say a word. I didn't know these guys, but I was like, dude, a degree is great. Okay. A degree with experience is invaluable. That's just how it is. There's some jobs that you need a degree before. I mean, you're not going to be a doctor and then, 10 years into being a doctor, go, you know what? I'm going to finally go for that medical degree. I'm going to figure that shit out.
Well, I've been doing that wrong all along. I'm sorry.
Well, what do you know? That was an artery, son of a bitch. Right. But in our job, I think that a degree is way better suited for the person that's got many years experience, not 5, not 6, 10, 15, 20. So that's one of the things, that's one of my gripes too about education when it comes to fire service.
Yeah. And so the problem is that it's so hard to do your degree 20 years into your career, because the education system, if you've been out of it for that long, everything's changed. Like, I struggle with my master's degree to write because it was a completely different, I think we used, I can't remember, it was MLA or APA, whatever it was the opposite of what I had done my entire educational thing. So I had to adjust to that. But, you have a mortgage, you have a job, you probably have a family by then, right? You have kids that have sports and dance and all these things. So it's just really hard to do it at a pace that's sustainable. Not to mention any class you did at your previous education before that when you were young doesn't apply anymore, because after like 10 years, you got to do math over again and stuff. So it's almost more advantageous to do it when you're young from the education side. The problem is on the application side, like you said, it's better when you're older. Also, how do you know at 18, 20 years old that you want to be a fire chief? Now, don't get me wrong. I've always been interested in that route. Maybe I get there one day. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Right now, what I'm focused on is I would really like to be a battalion chief one day before I retire. I think that's probably the coolest position on the department in my eyes, other than being a company officer. Let's be honest. We all get old. the job is hard on you. So like at some point you probably don't need to be advancing hose lines into your 50s and 60s on a regular basis, right? But you could ride in that buggy and you can apply your experience. So I think that would be cool. But I just think about how my viewpoint has changed down, over the years, and how many people I've watched go from saying, I want to be a firefighter for the rest of my life, I never want to promote. And then at 8, 9, 10, 12 years into their career, it's like, maybe I do want to be a company officer. You change, you mature, right?
Sure.
You become, like you said, you become a parent. That sort of applies at work. So it's kind of that double-edged sword with education. And I think the whole point of education to me is not that I'm better or smarter than anybody, is that it's the same as the military. You proved that you could operate to a defined standard and that you had the discipline to get from A to B. That's literally why people they like you from the military, because you have that discipline. So same thing with education. Now, I have picked up some awesome things in my education that have helped me as a company officer, will probably help me down the road, hopefully one day as a chief officer. But there was a lot of my degrees that I will never use again. Do you know that there's like 100 versions of freaking Cinderella? No. I learned that was part of my one of my art classes or something I had to take. Yeah, there's like 55 versions of Cinderella dating back to like the 1600s. How that's going to help me at work, I don't have a freaking clue. But I know that. So I get the fluff thing. And I almost think with the fire service, the problem is that, I know people in the Northeast saying that the PhD is now going to end up being a requirement for fire chief. Why does a fire chief need a doctorate? Right. I mean, I understand the management stuff. I understand the budgeting stuff, but let's be honest. We're not brain surgeons here at the fire department, right? Like we have our mission in theory is very labor intensive to carry out. There's some chemistry in it. There's some physics. There's some logic in it, but compared to somebody that's going to, replace your hip, it's probably not on the same realm. So, I've always thought that at the company officer level, why require a degree? Why not require, get with your local community college, whatever, and decide, here's a technical writing class so you can write a report and not sound like a moron. Here's a basic management class so you know how to manage people. Here's a basic HR class so you can, better understand the dynamics. And then when you get up to, the battalion level, that kind of thing, maybe we start putting an associate's degree in there, because there are some more things where that would be helpful. And hey, the fire chief, yeah, you should probably have a 4-year degree, because you're going to go talk to people outside the fire service that are probably much smarter and more educated than you, and you really need to be on that level. So, absolutely. But why as a company officer, I have a master's degree. I can tell you that most of it at the company officer level does not help me one bit any day. It's for stuff hopefully down the road, and because I had a GI Bill and I was fortunate enough to not have to pay for most of it. That's why I have it. I'm just being honest. Right. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I hope that degree will open doors for me down the road, and I just see the writing on the wall. And if people dislike me for that because I was fortunate enough to have those opportunities, then fine. But you will never hear me run around. Now, I will say that my bachelor's degree is better than most people's because I am an EKU graduate, and they are the most prestigious fire programs in the country and have 4 degrees. Exactly. That's why I picked EKU, because I didn't have to pay for it because the Montgomery GI Bill did. So I want to go to the most storied fire program in the country. And anybody who knows anything about fire service education, hopefully on a resume, will recognize that compared to the guy that went to, I'm not even going to say a real university because I'll probably get sued, but Middle Desert Tech or whatever, like hopefully EKU is a little more prestigious than that. But yeah, and I get it with the kids, and sadly you see a lot of the kids come on that have that degree and their company officer doesn't, and it's like, oh, well, I'm smarter than you. Okay, friend, you're going to learn today.
Yeah. Show me how smart you are pulling this hose over and over and over.
Please show me. I'll be back.
Brother, I appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the living shit out of this one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man, it's been. I like this more laid back. It's dangerous though, because you're laid back and you might start running off at the mouth.
Oh yeah, I got to cut a lot of shit out of this. Hey, one more thing we got in common too. It looks like.
Yep, I got that one.
Oh, look at there.
This is my pride and joy. I don't know. It's my St. Florian. He's upside down.
Oh, I see. That's nice. Is that new?
No, that's like 4 or 5 years old now. So
okay. All right.
Hopefully my stupid dog barking isn't picking up on this mic, because he's been going at it here for 30 minutes.
All right. I'm as low key as it is. Hey, brother, listen, thanks a lot. And I appreciate your time on here. And I'd love to have you back. We still got to talk about culture and stuff like that.
Hey, and anytime you want to do it, I'm blessed that I don't work part-time right now. So any day I'm off, I'm all yours.
All right, man. And with that, cheers.
Cheers, brother.
See ya.